What is going on? Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. My name is Jake, and I have decided that I want to bring a brand new franchise series of reviews. And so for the next few videos, I'm going to be talking about the Scream franchise. Today, we're starting off with the original from 1996. And not only is this the first review in this series, but this also is one of my favorite movies as well. So before we talk about it, do me a favor, hit that red subscribe button. If this is something you're interested in, you like videos like this, that is what I do on my channel. I talk horror and thriller movies, and that is it. So if you like this, hit that button. I would greatly appreciate it. Scream was directed by Wes Craven and came out in 1996, and really in a lot of ways kind of reignited and gave some fresh blood to the horror genre. It tells the story of Sidney Prescott and a new killer, Ghostface, who targets her and her friends by using horror movies as a part of a deadly game. The first thing I want to talk about with Scream is that I think it pretty much perfectly marries the genres of horror and comedy together in such a great way. I think it is easier to make a comedy film with some horror elements than to make a horror film with some comedy elements. Typically, when you have horror comedies that work, I think the comedy kind of comes first and the horror is a bit secondary. But Scream, I think, is one of those kind of rare gems because I think it's so much harder to do it the other way around, where this is still concerned about horror and scaring you first and foremost, but it also brings along humor into the mix, and it's that perfect marriage of horror and comedy that works so well. And it mixes both of these elements so effortlessly. And what I mean by that is it's not trying to tell jokes. It doesn't like set up a joke and then, deliver a punchline. It's effortless because the comedy comes through the characters, because they have well-written characters, great performances out of the characters, and the characters themselves are just who they are, and who they are is funny and entertaining. And so the comedy just shines right through the characters. It's not this forced kind of joke telling, but it just is effortless because it comes right out of the characters and who they are, and it just works great. Not only is this a solid horror and comedy film, I think the story is also constructed as an effective mystery as well. This is really kind of a whodunit in a lot of ways, and I think that pairing with the horror and the comedy aspects just works so well. This movie has a lot of just good kind of sort of fake out surprises, unexpected things, twists and turns, and the mystery element works great as well. Now, obviously, you can't talk about Scream without talking about the whole meta aspect of it, and that is one of the most appealing parts of it as well. And this is really a horror film for people who love horror films. And more specifically, it's a slasher for people who love slashers. Now, I want to talk about the opening scene, and it's obviously great, and there's probably nothing I can say that hasn't already been said, but I'll just give a few of my thoughts. And this is just an awesome scene all around. Not only is this the best scene, I think, in the entire movie, but this is just an iconic horror scene in general, and one of the best horror scenes, I think, of all time, at least that I've seen. Everything about it just works so well. You've got just this great dialogue exchange between Drew Barrymore and the killer. Kind of starts off flirtatious and then quickly turns sinister and dark. And so the writing is good. Barrymore's performance is really good. There's just good suspense building and terror in there. You get some gnarly, gruesome kills with seeing Steve out there with his guts all out. And then you also get just the great, meta aspect of it, where, talking about what's your favorite horror film, and you just can't help but smile. Again, this is a horror movie for people who like horror movies, and you can't help but smile when Drew Barrymore talks about Nightmare on Elm Street and how the first one was good, but the rest of them sucked.
Is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers?
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy, that's right. I like that movie. It was scary.
Well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
So, you got a boyfriend?
I'm sure Wes Craven was there just in the background on set that day, just kind of nodding his head going, uh-huh. And you can't help but love it. And again, it speaks to me as a horror fan, And the opening sequence is just absolutely fantastic. Obviously, it was shocking and surprising when it premiered in theaters because everybody expected Drew Barrymore to be, the main character and to be in the whole movie, and they kill her in the first, 10, 15 minutes or whatever it is. And I remember watching this film for the first time. It's been years ago now, but I watched it at night by myself. And I remember having a little bit of that feeling of on edge, and it just grabs you. The suspense is there, the feelings of anxiety is there. You're just waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for somebody to jump out. You're waiting for him, to attack Drew Barrymore. And I just remember sitting there in my room late at night, however many years ago it was, watching this, and I mean, it hooks you right from the get-go, and it's just a great scene. What also works so well with Scream is the characters. So often in slasher films, and even in a lot of the better ones and good ones, so many of the characters are just so bland and uninteresting and undeveloped that there's just nothing there. And a lot of them are just simply used as kind of cannon fodder to just throw at the killer so they can, off them. And so, but Scream is way, way better at its characters than the vast majority of slasher films, if not maybe almost all of them. And there are little things about pretty much every character that I think is absolutely great. Each character kind of has its own just unique identity. They're well established and fleshed out, and they have their own little quirks that I just find entertaining and that I just like so much about them. So let's start talking about a few of them. First of all, I got to talk about Randy because he speaks to me as a horror movie fan. And the thing that I love most about Randy is at the end of the movie when everybody is at the house for the party and they just get the call that their principal has been brutally murdered, and everybody leaves except Randy because Halloween's on TV and he's got to stay there and watch Halloween. And I just love it because it's like there is nothing in this world that is going to pry Randy away from watching horror films. And it's like, you know what, Randy, I get it. I understand. And there's a little bit of me in Randy. When that horror movie's on, man, it's time to watch a movie. I don't care what the heck's going on. If my principal just got murdered, it's like, no, it's time to watch Halloween. And I just love that Randy is the one who stays because when the horror movie's on, you got to watch it. You can't leave for nothing. So, Randy, you speak to me, man. Also, talking about Randy, I can't help but point out one of the other awesome scenes in this movie, a little bit of the homage to Carpenter's Halloween. And the scene where he is sitting there yelling at Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around because Michael Myers is behind her. I mean, it's just absolutely great because not only are they paying homage by, him watching the movie, but they're executing that scene as if it was a Halloween scene. Because just as Michael Myers, lurks and creeps up behind you with the person totally oblivious, that's what Ghostface is doing at this point in time, right to Jamie Kennedy. And they also drop in some of the Halloween music as well. And then you've got just the added layers of the people out in the van yelling at him to turn around because there's a killer, while he's yelling at the TV to Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around because there's a killer. And how do you not love it? It's just this great, original, unique scene that is just perfect. Obviously, the characters of Gale Weathers and Dewey are just great, and their relationship that kind of develops through this. Gale's character introduction is fantastic. It tells you all you need to know about who she is. And Dewey's cheesiness and just total goofball is just so endearing, and it works. And you would just like never expect these two to, get into the relationship that they have, but I guess opposites really do attract. But their scene where they're kind of flirting back and forth, and there's a few of them, just their performances and the writing here, there is an element of cheesiness to it, but like it just works so well.
Of course, you don't look a day over 12, except in that upper torso area. Does the force require you to work out?
No, ma'am. Because of my boyish good looks, muscle mass has increased my acceptance as a Sears police officer.
And again, that cheesiness quality in Dewey it's just kind of endearing, and you just can't help but love the guy. And so their flirtatious scenes are just really great. Obviously, their characters are great, and just another thing about this movie that I really love. Next up, you have Sydney Prescott, who, she is really there to carry the majority of the dramatic weight out of the movie, and she does really good. I think her performance is good. There's just she just portrays a lot of just kind of the internal struggle and conflict really well, and just really dealing with the whole difficulty of her past with her mom and now dealing with this. And so she gives kind of with the comedy elements that are in there, she kind of helps maintain sort of the grounded seriousness of it and everything. And one of the great final girls, and obviously Sydney Prescott is great. But now we have to talk about my absolute favorite. And can we all just for a minute sit back and appreciate Matthew Lillard? Because, oh my goodness, is Matthew Lillard just the best in this film. And again, it speaks to just somehow the fusion between horror and comedy in this movie works so well. Matthew Lillard is such an absolute spaz and completely over the top that, like, in any other film, this sort of character and his, sense of humor and all that stuff, I feel like would just kill the movie and just totally ruin the tone, and it wouldn't work for me. But this is just that kind of rare, gem that it just works. He is absolutely hilarious and has me laughing multiple times throughout the movie. I mean, his facial expressions alone are just absolutely legendary. I mean, you could take a freeze frame of, any scene he's in this entire movie and just look at Matthew Lillard and he's doing something that's just hilarious. And even just small little character details, like the fact that later on in the movie at the party, he's wearing this like Hugh Hefner red robe is just hilarious to me. And then he also gives us two of the best lines in this movie and two of the funniest lines, I think, in horror movie history. Let's check them out real quick.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
See?
I mean, you gotta love it. It's just great. And then he gives us this one, which is just, oh, it's perfect.
We call the police.
You're sorry, Aslan.
My mom and dad are gonna be...
I mean, man, he is just the best. I absolutely, man. He makes so many parts of this movie, and again, I feel like in any other movie it would just totally kill it, but it just works here so great. Other scenes that stick out for me, I love the scene at the movie store where Randy and Stu are talking, and Randy just starts, going crazy and losing his mind, and everybody's a suspect, and everybody turns over and looks at him.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
Another scene that sticks out for me that I think is just a nice kind of suspenseful scene is towards the end at the party where Ghostface finds Sydney and she ends up getting and locking herself in the car, and she's going back and forth and hitting the locks, and she thinks he's safe, and then behind her, the trunk opens, and it's just a nice kind of tense, suspenseful moment. I could go on and on about this movie, but in the end, this is one of my favorites, and it's a genuine certified horror classic, and the characters are great. It's funny, it's entertaining. It's impossible not to have just a smile on your face throughout the most of it. It's just such good entertainment, just such a good time. The story and the writing are all really solid. There's just some great twists and turns. I mean, ultimately at the end with the sort of the twist with there being the reveal of two killers, and I just love sort of what they do with the character of Billy of, oh, you think he's the killer, oh, then he's not. Then you think he's the killer, oh, then he's not. Then he's the killer, right? And it just kind of messes with your mind there and just throws so many twists and surprises and unexpected things at you. And it's just a great movie. And like I said, I love it. And so those are my thoughts on Scream, but let me know what you think. Hit me up down in the comments. What is your favorite scene of this movie? Who's your favorite character? What's the funniest line? Let me know down in the comments what you love about Scream. I would love to hear from you. So that is it. That's all I got for you on Scream. As I said, I'm going to be doing this entire series, so of course Scream 2 is up next, and we will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.